so nice.
kids.
I mean,
It's a whole day adventure.
I like people that treat
Just one
you
of those
with
ways, you know, right under the.
I mean, you got the big city hospitals. They aren't so
Yes.
respectful of people at all. I go,
My dad's a fan of Cleveland Clinic, and I am not a fan of it.
well, I used to go to Cleveland Clinic all the time, and now I switched over about probably 3 years ago to
I
University.
love University.
They run a lot of tests. Cleveland Clinic hardly talked to me at all.
Yes.
And I kept switching doctors, not by me doing it. They were doing it. They get promoted all the time.
Constantly.
I have one doctor now, and I've had him for the last 4 years. But he tests me so much, it worries me.
You're like, who's paying for
Why
it?
do we have to keep testing me all the time?
For sure.
It's not that it costs me money, but he's so, I just want you to know. And I go, I don't know if I want to know that much about me.
I don't want to know that much.
I mean, it hits a certain point in your lifetime. I'm already 5 years over my due number. And this is a joke.
Happen, don't tell me.
Well, no, my due number is my relatives. You know, we tell the history. They had high blood pressure. They died before 70. But my dad used to always tell me, everybody say, well, Dad lived to be 80. He had a stroke too.
Yep.
Lived to be
My
87.
dad's 91.
Is it
My
going
mom's
up?
going on 95. Well, maybe.
91, yeah.
I mean, people are living longer. But I kind of laughed at my dad. Because when my dad passed away, my mom was really in my face all the time telling me he died so young. Mom, you realize he lived, he was the seventh son of a son, 14 in the family.
Yep.
And I go, do you understand? Dad was second longest in his family. One of his brothers was 6 years old when he fought in the Battle of the Bulge. Was to be 89. Dad was in the Army also. The 2 Army guys. I go, what's the longest?
Always.
And I go, they got a lot of shots.
Exactly.
Maybe that's what kept them living.
You're absolutely
Can I ask you a question? Yeah.
I know. Sorry, we're gonna.
I believe so, yes. I think the red means you're muted.
Check, check.
Yep.
Even though it's summertime.
Yep, there.
It was in the agendas that sent me.
I know.
These aren't turned on yet, right? Oh,
Okay.
okay. Anyone, I was concerned.
What thing?
I don't want to talk to you.
Hey, Mr. Stitzel.
It was at the
Nice to see
the
you.
board meeting, not the board meeting, but the mayor's, one of those committees. Oh, okay. I won't talk about it.
Hey, CJ. Thank you so much.
For Wild Eagle Saloon.
No one understands it. Well, that has nothing to do with the city park.
No, City Park, there was,
Something about open.
yeah, well, it was,
We had speakers then.
they're having a festival in the park, the city council has to approve them to get a 1-day beer.
Thanks, guys.
That's all it is.
And that's one do it for the bicentennial.
What do you need?
Yeah, I think it's something like that.
But there's no student session.
Oh, no.
I don't know. I mean, even now, with all the craziness in our world,
I'll spot it.
Well, when they do it during family day, they give beer tent.
oh, they've always had that in the
Yeah.
city?
Thank you.
Oh, so nothing.
No, nothing.
Okay.
And this is actually that day. Family I still remember.
And it's just like too bitter or something.
No, they
But not alcoholic.
no, they bring, that's good. You okay with that? They brand it, but they bring it in a big truck, and they have.
And I was ready to pass out over there. Oh, yeah.
Secure area.
People have to stay in that area.
I was looking at that.
Stay in that area.
I remember.
Everywhere around the park.
I have it as
Or
well.
off that.
Okay, I have a question. I have a baseball question. Is it okay to say the batting average is 340, or do I have to say 340? I thought so.
Yeah, I always wonder about Aurora, because
I just don't want to sound
man,
like
they're pretty close to the schools. Those places that serve But
Did Brian trip you, Kyle?
you just don't know what to think anymore.
Did Brian trip you?
You know, I'll be my polite self with the board. I don't want to be like that. I think I'm dyslexia, but I just want to talk about it. There's a handbook coming out, and it's supposed to have been passed May 10th or 12th, and today is
Yeah,
what, May
behind you.
10th?
Check, check.
Well, if I should
Check,
have passed
check.
it, I didn't see anything on the computer, but I didn't pass it. I just wanted
Thank you.
I try to make kind of the guidebook. Gosh, man, you guys, my print.
You ready?
What's
to order. Mr. Kiffer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bedford,
Here.
Mrs. Campbell,
Here.
Mr. Fulton,
Here.
Mr. Grimm,
Here.
Mr. Violi.
Here. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance.
To the
To the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on to public comments. Do we have anybody signed up?
Yes, we have 2 public comments.
Okay. Before we call them up, let me
Can you give this to Mr. Violi?
Yeah.
figure out how this computer works. There we go. Community comments are one way for citizens to communicate with the Board of Education. When your name is called, please come to the podium, state your name, address, and topic. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Remember, this is a formal and official meeting of the Board of Education, and what you say becomes part of the official meeting record. If your comments involve a problem with a student, employee, or board member, please do not identify them by name. Keep in mind we are meeting in a schoolhouse in the presence of students. At this time, the primary role of the Board of Education is to listen and reflect on what is said. Sometimes we may respond or ask questions, but not always. Whether or not we respond, your input is valued. And we have Sarah Friedman is signed up first.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Friedman. I live at 805 Holborn Road, and I'm here to discuss busing to Valley Christian Academy in Aurora. Prior to the beginning of last school year, I contacted the Transportation Department and was told that there would be no busing for the 21-22 school year because the VCA families that lived in Streetsboro did not want it. The woman I spoke with said I could still submit a request, but that there would be no busing, so that seemed kind of pointless, and I didn't bother submitting a request. In speaking to some of the other moms at the school, I learned that there was interest, but that Streetsboro was having issues finding bus drivers, but that we could be paid in lieu of transportation being provided. I'm a single mother of 3 with a job that keeps me tied to a computer, and every day I take 2 hours away from work to take the kids to and from school. I do not have a good local support system network as far as my family lives kind of further away. And I have 3 kids, so finding people to pick up 3 kids is a little more difficult. 2 of them are in boosters, and 1 of them has behavioral issues. So there's not a long list of people to add 3 people to their car. I have to take leave without pay, or I have to pay for aftercare, which is a financial burden. I start work at 5 a.m. The other option is I can start work at 5 a.m. and then start working again at 8 p.m. when I get the kids to bed. So that's exhausting. That's usually what I choose to do. More than anything, I would like to have busing provided, but if there's absolutely no way that that can happen, then we need to at least receive the proper compensation. The state of Ohio Department of Education stipulates that if it is impractical to transport a pupil who is eligible for transportation to and from school, under section ORC 3327.01, the board shall pay the person in charge of the pupil an amount of not less than $538.55 for the 21-22 school year, which is half of the average cost of pupil for the previous school year. I was advised that the Board of Education has offered the VCA Streetsboro families only $400 per child for the 21-22 school year. At a minimum, these families need to be compensated the $538.55 per the Ohio Department of Education. Sticky pages. However, they can be paid up to $1,077.09 for the 21-22 school year. Let me give you a real-life example of why no busing and $400 per student is insufficient. If I pay for 2 hours of aftercare at the school for 3 kids so I can work 8 hours in a normal workday, that's $36 a day, $720 a month. So that's roughly $6,000 per year. As you can see, the busing is preferable, but in lieu of busing, I would hope that you would consider awarding more than $538.55. In summary, I hope you reconsider the amount that has been offered to the Streetsboro VCA families for the 21-22 school year to assist in financial burdens that have been placed on them, and reconsider offering busing again for the 22-23 school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Friedman. We have Ashley McDonald next, please.
Hi, good evening. So my topic is the same. It's in reference to the VCA families who all went without busing this last year. So when purchasing a home almost 2 years ago, I only looked in districts that provided transportation to Valley Christian Academy, and the factor weighed heavily when we decided to buy in Streetsboro. And if we had known it would be taken away, I don't know that I would have made the same decision. My son has 2 tax-paying households that live in this district. In the last 2 years, schedules were ideal, not this past year, but the 2 years prior. The morning meeting spot left plenty of time to get to work, and the afternoon drop-off at home or the neighborhood entrance around 4 p.m. was perfect. When we discovered that our district deemed our route impractical, I immediately and respectfully asked the decision to be reversed. When that didn't happen, I reached out to our area coordinator with the Ohio Department of Education. She hosted a mediation this past October, which did not yield a result because by that time, the reason that our route hadn't been reinstated was due to hiring issues. We didn't see any point in pursuing further action if there was no staff to fill that position. Streetsboro makes up the largest population of VCA students with 32 enrolled this year. The past year, 15 students needed transportation. Nordonia buses 9, Aurora buses 8, Twinsburg buses 11. Surely 15 plus is reasonable for this district. We expect to be served for the 22-23 school year, and we are requesting a morning shuttle and afternoon drop-off, but we will also accept an afternoon shuttle if that's the only option. In addition, the school is willing to let our students out a few minutes early if needed to kind of accommodate that routing. As for payment in lieu for 21-22, the offering of $400 doesn't scratch the surface for our extra costs. Afternoon extended care from 3 to 5:30 costs us $2,580 per year per student, plus an additional $1,000 a year in fuel costs on top of the tuition that we already pay. According to a document posted by the Ohio Department of Education this past September, the minimum payment in lieu is $538.55 per student, and the maximum is $1,077.09. Since it's not likely that we will be reimbursed by the district for the full amount of our extra expenses due to your decision that busing our children is impractical, we are asking for the maximum payment in lieu. Please show us that you are doing all you can, raising wages, rerouting, creative problem solving to ensure that the needs of your community voters are met. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McDonald. That's all we have signed up.
Yes.
Moving on to approval of minutes. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the minutes from April 14th, 2022 as submitted.
I'll move.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Any comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford?
Yes.
Mr. Fulton?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes, motion carried. Moving on to reports, we have superintendent's report first.
Thank you, Mr. Violi. I'd like to invite to the podium Jen Wolf and Tracy Samuels from the middle school. And I think they're going to present something that not only will the board be excited to hear, but I predict that our community, our school community will be excited to hear what they're proposing to this board tonight for approval. So they're on their way up, along with Mr. Stitzel.
Can slide the bench away.
Mrs. Wolf, we put the stool there for Mr. Isle for when he comes up to present. If you wanted to move that aside, you could.
I thought it was for me. It's because he's tiny. A brutal moment.
One extra touch.
So for those of you who don't know, I am Jen Wolf. I am one of the sixth grade intervention specialists. So for several years, we have gone to Mohican Camp, but with COVID and everything closing down, Mohican unfortunately closed. We have tried to do some things with the kiddos just around Streetsboro. We do have Camp SMS, which we will be doing at the last week of school. So we've tried to bring several of the camp activities to Streetsboro here, since we have not unfortunately been able to go anywhere. But Ms. Taylor asked us to start looking into different camps that we can go to for next school year, so we were very excited about that. We reached out to several different camps, and the one that we seemed to find that we really liked the most, that had the most to offer for our kiddos, was Hiram House Camp. So we have some tentative dates, obviously pending approval, of May 3rd through the 5th of next school year. It will be about $150 per student, and I'll go over what that all includes. The camp is called Hiram House, but it is actually located in Chagrin Falls, and it's called that because it is on the Hiram Trail. It was founded in 1896, and they actually just did a major rehaul of many of the buildings there, so they have gotten many updates within the past couple of years. So at Hiram House, one of the things that we really liked was the fact that all of our students could go at one time. Many of the camps that we looked at didn't have the capabilities to handle about 150 students, but Hiram House does have the facilities for that. So they do have 4 cabins for students with separate sleeping areas for chaperones. Each cabin holds approximately 50 students, give or take, depending on the cabin. And then there is also a cabin available for teachers. So our students will be separated, once we figure out rooms and board and all of that. One of the things that is different about this camp, and pretty much every camp we looked into, is we would need to bring additional students with us, like high school students as chaperones. So we have talked to some people about that, and we talked about maybe looking into the web leaders, or maybe some of the seniors, they could maybe try and tie it into senior projects and things like that. Their dining hall seats up to 250 people. All the meals will be provided, and they can't accommodate any dietary restrictions. When I was talking to them about the food services, they actually have a catering company that comes in, so they are able to, if somebody is gluten-free and they need a completely gluten-free meal, they are able to accommodate that, because that was one of our questions. Some of the classes that they offer, the ones that interest us the most, were the archery, hiking, the ropes course, canoeing, the orienteering, stream study, and then there was a crafts one. So their classes there are taught by some of their staff as well as ours. And they talked to us about meeting with them ahead of time. That way we can come up with a full curriculum. We know exactly what we'll be teaching, what they will be teaching. And with all of the classes offered, it ties in, especially to our science curriculum, with the stream studies, the exploring of the rocks. With the language arts curriculum, they always have the students write about, our time at camp, or things that they're looking forward to. They do also, one of the things that the kids loved before was we would always do a big bonfire and camp songs. And so I was very excited to hear that they do that as one of our night activities with the kids. Oh, that was all mine.
Thank you for having us today. I'm Tracy Samuels, and I'm going to talk about the 7th grade and the 8th grade trips. We would like to propose for our 7th graders who have not gone on a class trip since, I believe, 2014. It's been a long time. In fact, it came up in memories today on the Duquesne and Klein. So it was 8 years ago, 2014. So we would like to go on Monday, May 15th. We do have a backup date as Tuesday, the 16th. The dates that we picked for this and for DC are after state testing, so that was really important to us. Right now, I don't have a definitive price. It is somewhere between $180 to $215 per student. That, of course, will fluctuate based on the number of students going and gas prices, which are super high right now. Some possible sites to be visited, the Gateway Clipper Fleet, which I did not know what it was. I did have to Google it. It's a boat. And then I got a hold of the tour company and I asked, do we go on the boat? Do we tour the boat? It's a river cruise. So the Carnegie Science Center, the Duquesne and Klein Heinz Field, the National Aviary Fort Pitt, all of these are possible places that we could visit. Depending on weather, crowds, things like that, we may need to adjust. All of the meals are included except for breakfast. The first day we would ask that students eat breakfast before coming to school, but lunch will be provided at the Carnegie Science Center right now. It'll be a voucher, so they'll get a choice of places to attend. And then dinner would be on the way home at Quaker Steak. Again, I know Jen mentioned dietary restrictions. We've always been able to accommodate any student that needs anything. If we're doing a buffet at dinner and they can't eat anything on the buffet, we're always happy to get them something off the menu or whatever they need to do. This trip does fill a lot of standards, like Jen also mentioned with 6th grade, especially for sure 2 life science, 2 physical science in 7th grade, all the earth and space, lots of in math, and then Mrs. Cochran is actually really excited to do a narrative with the students when they come back. So it will encompass at least 6 ELA standards. And then my favorite, Washington, D.C. So our proposed dates right now are May 24th through the 26th, which are the last 3 days of school next year. We have done this before. It actually worked out kind of nice. The students got off the bus and their 8th grade year was over, their school year was over. It is really difficult to get busing. In Cleveland, Lakefront Lines went out of business. They sold all their bus fleet. So we're sort of at the mercy of buses, and that was what was available, especially after testing. Right now, we're quoted a price of $449 to $225, but the same deal. That's going to depend on how many students go and gas prices. The students will be paying a room based on 4 students, be paying a price based on 4 students per room. In the past, we have had students who want to do a room of 2. We have prices for that if that is something that they wish. All the meals are included for this, except for breakfast and lunch on the first day. We ask that they bring a bag lunch, and then we have lunch in a park while we're traveling. Dinner on the first day is at Buca. Breakfast will be at the hotel both days, the continental breakfast. For lunch on day 2, we will do a voucher at Pentagon City. It's a huge mall, and the students love it because they get to eat and shop. So there was no change from any spending money. And then day 2, dinner will be at Medieval Times. Lunch and dinner on the 3rd day are to be determined. Right now we have planned to go to Gettysburg on our 3rd day, so it would be somewhere along the way. Usually it's a voucher for lunch again, and then we do a buffet usually for dinner, so it's just finalizing those final little pieces. Our accommodations, we're gonna stay at Comfort Inn in Woodbridge, and there's security on duty once we get there until breakfast time the next morning. I included a picture of the hotel. It's really important with the tour company that we like to use that they pick hotels that only have one main entrance. There are no side entrances, so for sure no one else is coming in, but also our kids aren't getting out. And then there's a picture. We will have breakfast at the hotel both days, so they have a really nice big eating center. Depending on how many kids, we may need to break them into different shifts, but it's always worked out. So all the kids get to eat before we get on the bus. Lots of sites to be visited. There's tons of things to see and do in Washington, D.C. Lots of the outside memorials like Jefferson, Lincoln, FDR, MLK. Mrs. Wolf loves the FDR. The Vietnam Wall, the Korean War Memorial, and then we do Arlington National Cemetery. I have requested that we lay a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier again. That is not something that the tour company can control. That's at the mercy of Arlington, so we may be picked. But if not, it's still a wonderful thing to visit. Capitol Building, once it gets closer, I will reach out to our representatives and see if they will get us tickets. They have always in the past. We do a nice big picture. We don't go inside the White House, but we do a nice big picture outside the White House. We have tons of standards that are covered, especially a lot of history. With the students in 8th grade, they learn about our government, the founding of our country. So we will hit on a lot of those, and they do projects throughout. Included lots of pictures of the outside stuff. Do you want to do this? Sure.
So some preparations that Ms. Samuels and I have talked about. In the fall, we would like to do an information night for families. That way they can get more information. DC, everybody seems pretty familiar with at this point. But Hiram House has offered to come out and do a presentation for the families. So that way, a lot of the questions that we won't have the answers to, they will. We are planning some fundraisers. So once we know kind of what's what with all the trips and everything, we can do those to help families with payments and things like that. We will be collecting payments throughout the year. And we also plan on doing t-shirts. I know for DC, they've always done 2 t-shirts. Our last year at Mohican, all the students got t-shirts and they really loved it. So when we did Camp SMS last year, we got t-shirts for the students. Surprise, they're getting t-shirts again this year. And we will be tie-dyeing them as part of our activities before we go to camp as well. And just also with preparations for Hiram House, they will need, if it's approved, a signed contract within 30 days of us receiving it, and then also a $1,000 deposit.
That would be Kyle.
I need some money, thanks. And then the one thing that I did really like about Hiram House as well, our final payment is not actually due until after we get back from camp, because with it also being, about 20 minutes from Streetsboro, they encourage people to come and visit. So any staff members or any administrators that come during the day, and if they choose to eat there, they'll just send us a bill at the end. That way everything is situated, and that way if a kiddo gets sick or something and they can't come, we're not being charged for a student that didn't get to attend camp.
We really like the t-shirts as well. If you talk into the microphone, they can't hear you. I have a teacher voice. We really like doing the t-shirts. The kids have a souvenir automatically from the trip. With DC, we do 2 t-shirts. We always do a tie-dye as well. And we choose artwork that the students have created. So there's a picture of one of our solid color t-shirts on the right. And it was designed, I believe it says Megan Epple, I think that was her shirt. But we asked the students, so they have a say in, they have buy-in to this trip as well. And then we do a tie-dye. It's nice for safety. We can look out and we can see all of our green students, or our last t-shirt was black, which was nice. It was hot. I think that's all we have.
So Pittsburgh, is it a day trip?
It would be, yes, I'm sorry. It's one day. They would leave right around 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
And be back about 8:30 or 9 o'clock that night.
So I'm the mom that wanted to follow the bus. I'm sure you remember this. To Mohican, Mrs. Kravitz convinced me it was a bad idea. I love that this is all coming back. I think it's awesome. It's a good experience for them and for you guys. It's just a great thing.
We're very excited.
Yeah,
Thanks for
I'm
putting this together.
very excited.
But I
Oh,
like all the
totally.
thought you
Michelle
put into
Kravitz
it,
had to
right? The
talk me out of
security, the
following the bus.
food. I think parents will appreciate that. So thank you, and thanks, Mrs. Taylor, for getting this back on the radar.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Is this all fundraised?
It is, there's some fundraiser, and then it's parent payment, which is a big part of why we take payments throughout the year, and it's not just one lump sum. We know there are families who have maybe a 6th grader or 7th grader, maybe, and an 8th grader. We understand that. I don't think in the past 14 years that I've been doing DC, I don't think we've ever turned a student away for inability to pay. We make a way for it to happen.
And we have organizations too. I
Yes.
know when I was the president of the PTA, we tried to help where there was a
Yes.
need. As a board member, I would be happy to help as well. So,
Thank you.
We'll take care of it.
Thank you.
And it's always nice to see that the teachers, you and other teachers in the past have found creative ways to tie in educational standards and concepts into fun activities, you know, something that the students will remember. It's also nice to see the hotel that you were planning to stay at, because I know people always worry, you know, is it a nice looking place? Obviously it's newer, so. And then with the Washington DC trip, I would not have any worries about it. Our students in the past have always been very respectful in Washington DC, you know, to the point where we come back, you come back and we see a video and it almost brings us to tears because we're so proud of our students and the way they were in Washington.
Yeah, I could have filled many hours of presentation with pictures from DC, but
Awesome, thank you for your work on this.
thank
Heinz
you.
Field, though? Nobody's gonna comment on Heinz Field, a tour of Heinz
This is
Field?
a family-friendly
Wow.
environment tonight.
Like, yeah, this one out here.
Okay, if they have to go to Heinz Field. CJ, they're hoping you'll lead that.
I'd like to come to your classrooms whenever you're doing a presentation on a recap of the Pittsburgh thing.
Oh, sure.
I'm a Pittsburgh native, so
Oh, wonderful.
I don't know how you're gonna see all those places in one day.
Right, no,
That's a lot.
those are suggested places.
But they're, every one of them I've been to, and they are incredible, so.
Excellent.
I'll chaperone.
Hey, listen, sign us up for chaperones if you need them.
Tracy and Jen, thank you for
Thank you.
presenting, and board, I thought you'd be excited about this. I know that we're not necessarily through COVID, but we're learning to live with COVID now, and I think it's certainly appropriate that we give these opportunities back to our students, and these two ladies have done a tremendous amount of work to make this happen, so it's going to be on the consent agenda. While on the consent agenda, it does say overnight trips, it does include, we did include the Pittsburgh day trip, just we lumped it into one category because we figured it was easier to do that way. So that is on the consent agenda for your approval. So Jen, Tracy, you guys stick around long enough so you can see if it's approved or not. No, I'm kidding. It'll be approved, I think. So, but thank you guys. This is going to be great. Thanks, board. My next item on the agenda, I'd like to invite Mr. Isle, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, to come up to the podium, and while he's making his way up and pushing the stool into place, you know, I would like to say that some of the test scores are starting to roll in, and yeah, please don't stand on it.
This is guitar.
Some of our test scores are starting to roll in, not all of them, and you know, I'm not going to take anything away from Matt's presentation, but I mean, as we all well know, we're coming out of a pandemic, and one of the challenges has been starting to address the gap in instruction over the last couple of years, because there was a significant gap in instruction. And I think that our preliminary data that Matt is going to present, from my standpoint, is very encouraging, but I won't draw any conclusions for you. So when Matt's done handing this out, he'll present to you what we've seen so far.
Just give me a minute to adjust the mic here.
I'll need it.
Sorry, Mike. Adjust the mic. All right. There we go. And how do I show it? Right, slideshow. There we go. Well, so it's not too often that we get to really give props to our State Department of Education. Sometimes we, another thing from ODE, but at the beginning of the year, about November, they rolled out a new centralized reporting system, streamlined the way they go about reporting test reports, these high-stakes tests. Before I start that, I'd be remiss, if we do have a chance to send our 7th graders to Pittsburgh, I would really love for them to stop by, if possible, to the Cathedral of Learning on the University of Pittsburgh's campus. Was voted one of the most like the Harry Potter in the country. Just saying, my daughter's a senior there. Great place to visit. Plus, it's the Cathedral of Learning, and that's what we're all about, right? Learning. Definitely not Heinz Field, Mr. Scarsapino. So, we completed our tests in April. Our testing window in our district for these sets of tests was April 12th through May 4th. The buildings, intervention specialists, all the teachers, they worked diligently to get everybody made up. We invited some students to the board office to complete the tests. It was all hands on deck to make sure that happened for our kids. And amazingly, our window closed May 4th, and the test results were loaded. They said by May 10th. They're actually in by, I think, I received a text from Mrs. Kravitz about 10 o'clock on Monday evening saying, Matt, they're already in. So they were actually loaded late on Monday night of this week. And so I started playing around with some of the numbers, and I was encouraged, to say the least. I'd like to talk a little bit about mathematics. It's in green, no change in our limited area from last year to this year. We lost 2 points in the basic area, but we picked up 3 points in the advanced area, which is really exciting. It's for grades 3 through 8, 8th grade, and high school algebra 1 and high school geometry. It's definitely not where we want to be. I think looking at that data, I want to thank the board again for investing a little over $200,000 in the last 2 years in updated materials and curriculum to give our teachers the best opportunity to make the best impact on the greatest impact on our kids. So it is an improvement, and I'm really excited for the hard work and effort. I also know with our elementary staff, there is such a thing, and we all know it. It's called an implementation dip. This year they received a boatload of professional development, learning new ways to go about teaching. They had a lot of support from Mrs. Belviso, our math coach, but a lot was thrown at them. And at the same time, helping all of our children come out of the craziness that was last year because of the pandemic. So I'm just super pumped. And I'm really trying to limit the number of times that I say excited, Mr. Violi, this month's presentation versus last month. But I was really excited to see that we saw an increase. Looking inside the numbers, though, I really want to give a shout out to our geometry and algebra teachers at the high school. The state average for geometry was a 692, and ours was a 702, clearly in the proficient range. Algebra was the state average was a 699, and ours was clearly in the proficient range of a 704. That's not written on your data. Let's move over to science. In science, not every grade is tested. It's just grades 5, grade 8, and high school biology. We picked up 13 percentage points. We went from 58% last spring to 71% this spring. And that's huge, absolutely huge. And that doesn't say, and I know it's tested at grades 5, 8, and high school biology, but boy, a lot went into that at all the grade levels. We've put a huge investment in the science of reading and better understanding that. And as a former science teacher, we all know that the science test is really a technical reading test. Yes, they need to know an awful lot of science content, but if they can't read the material, it's a tough one to get through. Obviously, the limited and basic range drops dramatically, but the advanced range, we went from 17% last spring up to 26% of our kids in those tested areas achieved in the advanced ratings. So again, just really excited about that. I do want to give a shout out to the middle school team, primarily our 8th grade teachers. The state average is a 717, and our 8th graders scored a 731 average. That's in the high accelerated range is our district average. And again, people, I can't say enough that's removed from a global pandemic that we've never experienced before. So the resiliency of our kids, the resiliency of our teachers, to make that happen is nothing short of, in my opinion, amazing. And I'm really excited by that, Mr. Violi.
Super excited.
Yeah. Dr. Schneeman at the biology department, those biology teachers, theirs was a 719, 1 point away from being in the accelerated range. And as a former biology teacher, that biology test is not easy. It's a good one, and our kids really rose to the challenge. The next test, social studies. Again, we 12 percentage point change from spring 21 to 22 in the advanced range. We dropped the areas in limited and basic. We picked up 4 points on total proficient and above. It's fantastic. Our American history kids, that was not tested last year, so the sampling size is much greater. They dropped the American history last year. This year it's American history and government were the two classes. Our American history kids scored a 727, which is clearly in the accelerated range. That was our average. And the government was a 717, well above the state average of 713. So I'm really excited. I've said that already about a dozen times, haven't I? Sorry. And the last slide, I want to give props to Mr. McCann. This was sitting in my inbox this morning. I think he probably went home and pulled some numbers around, and there was like 8 tabs beyond this one where he really drilled down in. And I just want to say that, again, because of the centralized reporting system, you know, I've been getting messages all over the district that the teachers are already digging in. They're already reflecting. It's aligned to the standards, and they're already making changes on what they can do differently for next year. But if you look like the 21-22, our averages compared to the state proficiency levels, you know, look how much higher we are than the state average in all areas. Like a double point in just about every area. 18 points higher than the state average in biology, 22 points higher in the state average in U.S. history, 12 points in geometry. But then when you look at, Brett was able to pull and find the 2018-19, that was the year before I came on board here, and where we were at, and what that, when I look at it briefly, it tells me that we all had our struggles. Everywhere across the state had our struggles. There was a drop, you know, last year, you know, the tests were canceled the year that they sent everybody home on that extended spring break, if you remember. But while the rest of the state still seems to be struggling with their, you know, with the average is lower, our folks figured out a way. They did. And as a board, I think we should all be very proud of that, the work that our teachers did. And again, not just at the high school, but across the board. Now you're probably asking about ELA, our English one. That's a biggie. All grade levels are tested. I'm sorry, grades 3 through 8 again, and English language arts 2 are basically our sophomores going to that. Because of the extended response type questions, those are not going to be released until June 15th. So I'm really excited again to be able to come back and have another conversation with you in July, the next board meeting, to talk about that. Because again, in the area of science and social studies, there's an awful lot of reading going into that, and I know that we've invested a ton of energy, a ton of time, and a ton of finances to get our teachers what they need, and they're really rising, really coming up to the level, and I can't wait to see what our English language arts scores and our reading scores are going to show. Again, there's always room to improve, absolutely. None of us are wanting to settle and saying that this is where we want to be. But when you look inside those numbers, there's lots to be very excited about, Mr. Violi. I said it again, excited. Thank you for letting me have the mic for just a few minutes. I know it's not nearly as exciting as field trips to far off lands, but and I know test scores aren't really the thing that everybody wants to talk about, but I'm just really happy with what the initial 48 hours into of being able to analyze these results are telling us about our district.
Very encouraging.
And Mr. I want to emphasize what Matt said. When you take a look at our 2018-2019 data, that was the year that I'm looking at the high school slide specifically. That was probably it was the best year that the Streetsboro High School had ever had on the report card and on our end of course exams. So then take a look at obviously the 2021. That was a year after we had a year off from testing. We missed a lot of the school year from the pandemic. And keep in mind, last year we were remote for quite a bit of the year, in and out. And then take a look at this year's scores in algebra, geometry, U.S. history, government, and biology. And we are almost exactly back to, and in some cases exceeded where we were back in 2018 and 2019. You heard me, whether you were on the board or in the audience as a spectator, back in 2018, 2019, talking about that this district was on a trajectory, and we were really excited about how, and I said excited, Mr. Isle, how excited our students were doing. And, you know, the goal of this board has been always to, you know, part of our strategic plan is to grow every student at least 1 year. And we were well on our way to doing that in 2018, 2019. The pandemic hit, and this data shows, yes, we have a lot of work to do, but this data shows that we're back on course. And then one other quick thing I want to say that we may go more in depth to at a different board meeting, but Mr. Isle was instrumental in bringing the MAP assessments for our benchmarking assessments at the beginning of the year into our district. And we did away with the one that we had before. And what we were finding is, so benchmarking assessments, we benchmark our kids periodically throughout the year, and that gives you a glimpse, and it's aligned with state testing, it gives you a glimpse on where our students are performing against the state standards, and so that it can help us modify our instruction. And so I think that the implementation of the MAP testing has also really helped our teachers diagnose where our kids are and where we need to keep working. So I think our MAP testing also is helping with our overall test scores. So, Matt, I don't want to take any more of your presentation, but I agree with Mr. Isle. We're getting back on track.
In an email conversation I had with a couple of teachers this morning, I said, you know, these scores really don't adequately represent all of the stuff that makes our kids, right? We know that. This is just a little glimpse into just a small part of their lives. But I asked the teachers, I said, you know, you really should take a look at this as being the icing on the cake, right? That it's what everybody looks at. It's the pretty stuff that we're driving towards. And I know it doesn't adequately tell us everything that's good about Streetsboro schools, but it's really nice to see that the hard work is paying off in a lot of ways. Speaking of the MAP tests, you know, they're not mandatory. They're not required by the state. We do have to have benchmarking assessments. I had a conversation with an intervention specialist at the middle school. One of her students had to do some at-home learning for the rest of the year due to medical reasons. And she asked me, she said, Matt, is there any way that we could get him in, or we can have him do the MAP test at home or something? And I'm like, well, you know, it's really not necessary. You know, he'll take it next fall, and we'll have, you know, fall, winter of this year, and then fall of next year. It's really not that big a deal. She's like, oh, but he has grown so much. I really want to see that. I really want to see how much he's grown. I'm like, you know what? Let me give Mom a call. He's coming in Monday morning to my office at 8 o'clock, and we're gonna do the reading and math test together. And it was really really interesting that teacher really wanted to have this data, because she wanted to have it so she could, get this, celebrate with the child his success this year. So there you go. It's exciting stuff. I'm going to say it last time. That's it, Mr. Violi, I promise. Thanks, everyone, for letting me have this time.
Matt, I have one question.
Okay, hopefully I have one to answer. It's been a long day.
Hopefully you know the answer. Do we have a curriculum committee that you work with in the district on, you know, kind of reviewing what's needed based on test scores and all of that fun stuff? And that's kind of I know I'm not a new board member anymore, but just a question that I have.
A heavy reliance, we have our building leadership teams, our district leadership team that meets monthly. A heavy reliance on the TBT process, the teacher-based teams, you know, in selecting the math curriculums. You know, we pulled a committee together of teachers, and we met several times, you know, looking at the information. Spent a lot of time with the middle school and high school math departments over the last 3 years taking a look at that. So it's not really like an overall one curriculum committee. It's pretty much specific to, you know, the subject matter, and we try to get as many in-house experts as we can sitting on that committee to offer us insights and suggestions.
Thank you.
But
You're
Mrs.
welcome.
Campbell, it's the district leadership team that meets once a month.
Right.
It's all academic focused and looking at data. And so from that then, from that district leadership team, that's when discussions, which is when we just adopted the new math curriculum. That's where that discussion occurred, because our math curriculum was, I think at that time, 8, 9 years old, maybe 10.
The math curriculum, 2007, 2008 school year.
Yeah, I know it was
Yeah, so it was born from, okay, we're looking at our math data, what can we do? And that's when we said, you know what, it's time. We've got to do something different curricular-wise. Sure. And that's also where the letters grant for primary literacy was presented and then decided it, and then the elementary team applied for that grant and became one of the cohorts, as you guys already all know.
Yeah, I just want to ensure that we have a process in place that's including the teachers, because they're the users, right?
Right.
Yes,
Of everything.
absolutely.
That they're included in the conversation and they know what's going on.
I would go as far as saying that when he pulls then a specific group of teachers together, I'll just use math, so
Sure.
they decided on the Bridges curriculum, there are several options presented, and it's really driven by the teachers,
Okay, good.
the final choice.
Good.
But we do look at budget
Of course.
and things like that, but it's really primarily driven by teachers,
Good.
because they're the ones that have to have the buy-in.
Awesome,
So,
perfect. And
Those are good questions.
And I know I speak on behalf of the board. We're so thankful for our teaching staff in the district. We wouldn't be where we are without them.
That's
and
why we're here.
I am proud every day to be on this board.
Any other
Absolutely.
questions for Mr. Isle?
All right, thanks, folks.
Thanks, Matt.
You're welcome.
Mr. Violi, that concludes
Thanks for the
my
bench,
report.
Mike, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Dalbaugh. Moving on to treasurer's report.
Oh, boy.
Do you have popcorn? Do you have popcorn?
Look at the basket.
Dean, you want me to just close it down?
You can share with me.
Board, I was gonna have popcorn delivered to all of you up here for the show, but,
God, I forgot I
Unfortunately,
was
Sorry,
bring
everyone.
popcorn. You have 3.5 minutes.
Funny, Mr. Dalbaugh. Funny.
Does that conclude your report?
I did ask Ms. Taylor to do the presentation for me, but she declined.
Doesn't he look like a Backstreet Boy?
Oh my gosh. All right, everybody, funnies aside. All right, that's, I see how it is.
You know we adore you.
Thank you. All right, I will try to be swift and quick today. We are going to go through a couple agenda items and then go right into the 5-year forecast, which is required by ODE. So here's general fund activity for April. And so you can see that we have a general cash balance of $11.7 million in the general fund. And expenditures did exceed revenues by $1.5 million. That is mainly because April was just one of those months where we had 3 payrolls in 1 month. So out of 26 pays, there's going to be a month that has 3 payrolls. This is something that I'm going to be signing an agreement with. Treasurers have the authority to sign with a public fund, almost like a financial advisor for a district. And I wanted to let the board know. So we are at a point where there are idle funds because of the way our cash flow works throughout the year. And I'm going to contract on behalf of the board and everybody with Meter Public Funds. I went through a different couple ones. Felt comfortable, very comfortable with Meter, and so the agreement that I would sign on behalf of the district would be not everything, but a chunk into different buckets to invest, to try to get investment earnings that I don't think that we're earning now, and there is a potential, given market conditions, with the Federal Reserve and Jerome Powell saying they're going to be increasing interest rates even more in the immediate and in the near future. It's time to act now to invest some public funds to try to gain money on investment. And so before the initial investment, which would be probably sometime next month, I would meet with a third party. They would understand the finances of Streetsboro. We have talked and we have reviewed the district's investment policy that was passed in August of 2019. We went through kind of cash flow because in July, August, February, March, that's 71% of the district's revenue for the year. So it's a lot of it is depending on cash flow. And what I'm not going to do is let money be tied up in investments and not have that. That's not going to be the case. So we really talk about that a lot. We talk about maturity distribution and basically different buckets in different years. What's maturing when, and what are the yields on those? And then we assess current market conditions. We all know that prices are going up. Inflation is at a 45-year high. But then again, on the other side of the coin, interest rates are going up. You can get investments in that, and now is the time to act. And all of these investments are not super risky. It's not like we're investing in stocks personally. We're not. And these are very safe investments. Now, is everything market prone? Is it 100%? No, of course not. But it's not we're not buying stocks individually or going through TD Ameritrade or something like that. These are very conservative, in my opinion, investments. And then I made sure that I had my commercial paper certificate, which is a very safe investment through the state, because that is one of the plans. And then ongoing, continuous improvement, meeting with our investment advisor, just continuing in changes to cash flow, updates on legislative items, like if something comes down the pipe in ODE that affects us financially, then we may dial back investment. And the board, in a couple months, will see a comprehensive monthly statement on what's invested, how much has been earned or not earned, and that will be a part of the reconciliation process monthly. So let's get into the last thing before the very exciting forecast. So I typically like to update the board during the forecast for Treasurer's Office efficiencies. So we did do an OFCC closeout. There we have incorporated the Fair School Funding Plan to the district. In process, we have capital assets system upgrade and we're working through Spark with that. And then we are starting the process to increase our ACH payments. It's less checks, more electronic payments. So there's a lot of process that goes into that. So you may hear me say increase electronic payments for the next year or so, or year and a half. And on the horizon is an employee access center through our accounting system to better, so our employees, our wonderful teachers and staff can have more of their financial data more accessible, W-2s, pay stubs, et cetera. And I have Buzz and Woody to the right. On a side note, I am convinced, everybody, that everything you need to learn in life, you can learn by watching Toy Story 3, specifically Toy Story 3. All right, let's go into the exciting facts of the forecast. So what is the reasoning for the forecast? It happens twice a year. So to engage the board and the community in long-range financial planning, to satisfy some Ohio Revised Code numbers, and specifically this thing called the 412 certificate. It's a way to communicate with ODE as well as the Auditor of State to identify school districts with potential financial problems or for future problems. And then obviously, probably the most important for me is committed to financial transparency to our community. So before we get into those numbers, the financial forecast is somewhat like painting a picture for the future based on a snapshot of today. I think Mr. Scarsapino used to say a snapshot in time. So it is viewed as a key management tool, and it is updated periodically. I'm not going to just present in May and November and not look at it throughout the year. So I'm constantly looking at our forecast. So in this forecast, the numbers honestly tell a small part of the story. For it to be meaningful, I submit the forecast, which is a one-page document, but also this is an 18-page document with notes and assumptions from the forecast. And it's really, if you really want some exciting reading, go through the document and you'll see how the district is coming up with this forecast. And really, yes, it's a treasurer putting it together, it's a treasurer understanding the numbers, but this is really the district's forecast. So what is it? It's filed with ODE twice a year per Ohio Revised Code. It's 3 years of historical data, and then 5 years of financial projections. So it does go out pretty far into the future. It covers only the general fund. And we focus to the current and present with also understanding our past. So in this one in particular, I know I did mention the general fund, but I am going to mention COVID's impact on our forecast. And the forecast is divided into two sections, very simple, revenue and expenditures. And the expenditures consist of everything: wages, benefits, purchase services, supplies, and capital outlay. But we do not have that much capital outlay equipment because we utilize other funds. So financially, as we hopefully make our way out of the pandemic, that has been the total support from the federal and state governments. And I have the first three crossed out because those have been fully expended. And we are currently spending the biggest one, the ARP, the American Rescue Plan through the Biden administration, the ARP ESSER grant. And so as of April 30th, we've had $482,000 expended and $273,000 encumbered, and a part of that encumbrances was the curriculum purchase through Mr. Isle last month that the board did approve. So there are a variety of new graphs, new exciting graphs for everybody to see and ask questions about, and better understand our current condition. And so this is revenue versus expenditures. So it's this new part of the forecast. It's pretty self-explanatory. As we go into they will begin to decline in fiscal year 25 due to the expiration of the 9-mil levy. What the forecast does not, we do not assume any renewal passages. If it drops off, I cannot assume anything what the community will vote on. And then this models the most current state revenue data within what was just incorporated, and what treasurers around the state have been really trying to grasp for the past 6 months was House Bill 110 and the Fair School Funding Plan. And I'll get more into that later.
And so, Kyle, people shouldn't be concerned about the revenue drop-off because that's going to be a point where we'll probably have to go back and ask for a renewal.
Correct.
So
And that would be my recommendation to the board, is renewing that in a couple years. Okay. Yes. And I know, and it's stable, but I know some people think that, oh man, the board and the community worked very hard in 2019 to finish, and we're almost at the point of renewal. So time does fly. This is also a new graph for the board to see. This gives a true cash balance. So within the general fund. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Cash balance for taking our average expenditures per day, and how much would our balance, if we're not getting any more revenue in, how long would we last? Obviously, in fiscal year 22, fiscal 23, it's going to grow a little bit in our projections. And GFOA, which is a Government Finance Officers Association, recommends at least 60 days of true cash balance. However, at least 60 days, that is bare minimum recommendation. I bet if I went to any community member or a business owner and said, hey, do you feel comfortable with 60 days cash? The answer would, in my opinion, would be a resounding no. But that is just bare minimum. And again, going into fiscal 26, that is without the levy renewal. So we're going to go right into revenues. So where the money comes from. And so we have our local sources, which is our current taxes levied on our residential and businesses of the community. That's about 75% of our revenue, so it's our lion's share, and state sources about 25%. And state revenues have increased in fiscal year 21 with the changes to open enrollment students being included in basic aid. Basic aid is a new term for that Fair School Funding Plan, one of the incorporations of it. So we have received more revenues because of the expense side being less. And I'll explain that when we get to the expenses. And honestly, the first two forecasts that I did, not that I didn't feel comfortable, but I really wanted to dive deeper into the revenue portion. So meaning every single levy that we have on the books and how that is factored into the future, not just taking it as a whole, projecting it out in a simple calculation. So I did go into our 6 levies with rollback, our 1 9-mil levy without rollback, and so I feel very comfortable right now with these revenue numbers being accurate. That's the hope, right?
I think this graph is really important because it shows 75% of our district is funded by the taxpayers in the community. And a lot of people don't understand that. I know I didn't have a very clear understanding until I got more involved, and it's something.
Correct. It's substantial.
It is.
And we're very grateful for the community
Absolutely,
members.
yes.
And that's not just, if someone had to ask, I think Mr. Violi asked me in the past, if I had to say it's about 2/3 from residential property taxes for houses, and then the other 1/3 is businesses in the area. I don't want to get into a rabbit hole about revisions or assessed valuations or anything like that, but that's basically, if someone asked me, 2/3, 1/3. It's a lot of new graphs for this forecast. You can see just how it shows, again, our local revenue to the state revenue. And state revenue based on House Bill 110, Fair School Funding Plan. So these general revenue highlights, some I already brushed up on. So Portage County will undergo update to values in tax year 2024, which will definitely, you see the market going on, it will definitely see a modest revenue increase. Now, people may say, oh my gosh, house prices are so high right now, you're gonna see so much more, but there is a very old law in the state from 1969, I believe, House Bill 920, that limits that. So taxpayers, it protects the taxpayer and businesses so they're not paying like a 15, 20% increase when valuations and values go up. And the revenue highlights the Fair School Funding Plan. I'm going to harp on that. There are 3 pages dedicated to the Fair School Funding Plan and the update in the notes and assumptions. I'm not going to go into it a lot, but it does eliminate open enrollment revenues and implements the state now pays districts directly where students are educated. So students in seats, and that's not how it was before. It was at the gross, so we booked revenues and also expenses twice a month, but now it's net. Then there's a Student Wellness and Success Funds that is now guaranteed a part of our base funding. Let me explain that. So it used to go into another fund, 467, now it goes into the general fund. And the hope is that the the General Assembly will continue that Wellness and Success Funds at current rates. That's important. And this is, the state has been delaying the release of fiscal year 23 state aid estimates to schools right now. So this forecast is following LSC simulations. What the LSC is a Legislative Service Commission, completely bipartisan, very exciting group in Columbus, and they basically take what would be laws, they draft, research, budget, and give a quantitative amount to possible laws on both sides of the aisle. So we're following those simulations for next year based on House Bill 110. I didn't want to end it this way for revenues, but in the market, there are signs of a possible recession, which does leave uncertainty for fiscal year 24 and 25, and that's important. And we'll probably know if a recession or not within the next year and a half, if I had to guess. So where's the money going? Where's the money going? It's mainly going to salaries and benefits, which is about 86% of our annual operating general fund budget. This was about 81, 82% in my last forecast, but it has changed due to House Bill 110. The reason why is that purchase services, that is the biggest change, almost $800,000 to $1 million that are not being expended by the district, and that purchase service number is being very much higher than it is. So now it's a more, in my opinion, more accurate purchase service number based on some team members that we have in our buildings from other organizations, whether it's special education contracts. Those purchase services is a vital part of our operations in our buildings. And then the other smaller ones that you have materials and supplies, equipment, equipment, we really try to utilize those permanent improvement funds. And the forecast, and I'll be honest, is that salaries and wages, especially our benefits, our health insurance benefits, next year is to raise 5.2%. In the past forecasts, I said 5% year after year. Well, I am no expert in health insurance, so I did reach out to our health insurance consortium. So next year is based on 5.5%, giving a little bit leeway if there's any people that are going from single to family coverage. And then for the future health insurance, I have an estimated 8%. Just because of the pandemic, people tended to not go or not have those elective surgeries, not go to elective information when it comes to health. But now we are seeing a claim spike, of course, going forward. So I did say we are, a part of what the House Bill 410 did not have is, so this will be a continued expense. It's not what we won't see anymore. We will not see open enrollment, STEM school payments, community school payments, scholarship payments. We won't see that anymore on our ledgers. But we will continue to see an increase that it's something to look forward to, look at for the future, is College Credit Plus, excess costs, other tuition type vehicles that does draw funds away from our district. And the forecast itself going forward, there's a lot of it with inflationary numbers, a lot of it is projecting a 3% increase, and at some points like fuel and other items is a 6% increase. So costs will continue to rise, that's no doubt, especially within wages. So next year does have our negotiated rates built into it, and then going forward does not have any rates built into it, but it does have step increases going forward as well. I promise I'm almost done, Ms. Taylor.
It's on page 20 of 900. I'm kidding. 22.
So other financial items to consider. So cash balance is positive throughout the forecast. That is a stable forecast. Deficit spending does begin in fiscal year 24, so we'll need to monitor those expenses. The new state budget, House Bill 410, is not providing substantial net new money. It does go into different buckets. There's a lot more restricted funds that I'll have to monitor and talk to the departments about. Most of the increase in 410 is, I did mention, no longer deducting open enrollment, community schools, and scholarship programs from our state aid. I just want to highlight that. I know I've talked about that a couple times. That is a huge change with the state. A change that probably went 20 years without changing, if not longer, almost a generation from DeRoth versus Ohio. That is a giant change, and I really, the money from House Bill 110, the way it's funded now with the state, I really do hope the legislature has something in place going forward. But every 2 years they do their biennium budget, and things do change. And like I said, the fair school funding is not funded beyond fiscal year 23. So that is up to our Ohio General Assembly, is up to our representatives. So here's the forecast summary for this year. I'm projecting $1.8 million revenues over expenditures. In fiscal '23, 1.3, fiscal '24, 600,000, and then we go into deficit spending. And so I will update the board as required, and obviously be very transparent of what is going on with our finances. And any questions? This financial information, the presentation, the forecast, the notes and assumptions will be included, as always, on the district finances part of the website. And I'm open to any questions from the board.
Yeah, Kyle, can you go back one page on your presentation? I know that when Mr. Lesak was on the board, he always looked at that line 6.010. And that's, you know, for the rest of the board members, that's the line that you pretty much want to look at and pay attention to, and will guide you into when we should be talking about putting the levy on. So when you get to like 2024, it's, we're still positive to our revenues, correct?
Correct.
But if you go to the next year, that's when the levy drops off, so.
Correct.
But is that, if the levy does come back on, there's a line in here, but I would pay attention, keep your eye on 6.010. It's important.
0.020 is where you see that levy.
Yeah, and I just, I would be remiss to not say thank you to the community for supporting the previous levy that was put on. That is why we're in a positive revenue right now. The other thing I had a question on the last page, or one of the last pages on here, it talked about days, operating days.
True cash.
remaining, where it says the state, you know, likes to see you have 60 days of operating cash.
Oh, that's GFOA, not the state.
Huh?
The true cash balance?
Kevin, do you remember what we were at? I mean, years ago, I mean, I think we were down to like 28 days or something
Yeah, I was
like
thinking
that.
somewhere right around 30 days. It was really low.
So, I mean, we've grown very well in the district, and the community shows their support. So just want to make sure we shout out that we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Kyle, you know, I have to do a quarterly and sometimes a monthly forecast, not a 5-year. So kudos to you, and this is a lot. And I've looked through some of the things that you have to take into account, and it's a lot. So thank you. But you know, I have to be within a 5-10% accuracy rate on my EPR every year,
Gotcha.
right?
Yep.
So how do we know that we're trending right, or that your snapshots that we're looking at, like how do we know that things are?
Yeah, that's a
you're
good.
showing- Go ahead.
No, it's a good question. And sorry to interrupt, but
No,
I
it's
can
okay.
answer that really
Yep.
quickly. One thing in the notes and assumptions. So that is something that I judge myself on, and I will always report that to the board. So if you look at page 4 of the notes and assumptions, currently as it shows, the revenues from the November forecast is 98% accurate. Property tax revenues, 98%. Page 5, because of House Bill 110, it dropped. It's 94% because I almost included almost $1 million in those community school transfers because of the first 6 months. The House bill really started on January 1st. So thank you, because this is how I'm going to judge myself. And the accuracy of the forecast is going to continue to be in the notes and assumptions. And if there's something that's really out of sync, I better know the answer to that, and I will. And I'll communicate that with the board.
Awesome, thank you. And I wanted to also mention that you do have that community program you're putting together, and if there's anyone in our community that is interested in this stuff, that you're welcoming them to come to the table and look at this stuff with you.
Yes. We have our finance committee. We met. We met 3 weeks ago, and it was a very good conversation. And if anybody has any business leaders or community members that, even if they don't have a financial background, if they want to learn about school finance and specifically what's going on in our district, feel free to go on the district finances part of the website or reach out to me. Thank you. Wasn't that bad, right?
Thanks, Kyle.
Mr. Kiffer, just in the future, referring to laws from around 1969, they're not necessarily very old. Just saying.
Oh, here we go. For the record, you started at 6:18.
Did I really?
So Kevin, are you trying to say
I
that
was
like
keeping track.
1962 would be old?
Negative.
Negative.
19.
Kyle, nice job. I know Kyle puts a lot of work into this and
Yeah,
takes a lot of
can
pride in
tell.
this, and I just wanted to thank you, Kyle, for all the hard work. Very nice job. Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Kiffer. Moving on to the Chief Business Officer's report, Mr. Scarsapino.
Thank you. I won't be as excited as Mr. Isle, but I'll try.
Super excited.
Do you need a stool?
Amanda, will you please come to the stage? No. I am short, though, that's for sure.
Good evening. Unfortunately, the reason I'm here tonight is not very exciting. This past Monday, we lost one of our staff members, not only in the operations team, but in our district. And so this evening, it was interesting. I actually texted her husband before I came and said, hey, would you have an obituary that I could share this evening? And he said, nope, she didn't want one. However, one of our team members had written something and sent it out to the district. And so this evening, I would like to read that for you so that we can honor someone who's been working in our district and loving on our kids for a really long time. And I also would like to, as I'll say, she had 28 years of service, so if we could have 28 seconds of silence to honor her memory, I'd appreciate it. Jamie Dunn was in her 28th year of driving a school bus for Streetsboro City Schools, having served thousands of students over the years with early morning pickups and making sure they got home safe every afternoon. In addition to morning and afternoon runs, Jamie also drove our youngest students, the preschool service, midday, and was a staple field trip driver for athletic and academic trips alike. She also served as one of our 2 onboard instructors, training our new drivers and assisting with ongoing professional development for our team. Jamie showed up, rain or shine, in frigid temperatures with snow and ice all around, and she really hated ice, Brian.
I know.
She also came in on the hottest days of late summer, always with a smile on her face and ready to go. She has been a staple at the bus garage for almost 3 decades, and we will miss her tremendously. Jamie Dunn passed away Monday in the early afternoon of May 9th, 2022. Our team will never be the same without her. So with that, if we could please have 28 seconds of silence. Thank you very much. Calling hours for Mrs. Dunn will be at Short Spicer Chrislip Funeral Home on Page Road on Tuesday the 17th. Tuesday the 17th, yes, from 5 to 8 p.m. And then her funeral services will be held on Wednesday at 11 a.m. Thank you for your time.
Amanda, thank you. I know that wasn't easy to get through. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the Dunn family as they deal with this. Our operations team is grieving right now, but we'll continue to get through it and keep her memory alive. I'd like to ask Mr. Stitzel, District Technology Coach, to come up now. Dan presented earlier in the year, and we're going to try to get him up here once or twice every year just to kind of report on what he's got going on as the District Technology Coach. He is a jack of all trades and is someone we can always rely on. He was running the operation this evening because Mr. Johansson is playing hooky this evening, so he's on vacation. He has vacation day today. So Dan,
All right.
the stage is yours.
All right, see to get this hooked up here. All right, well, good evening. I hope everyone got to enjoy the sunshine a little bit, even if it was like in the car ride over here. So I want to talk about a few things tonight. The first thing is the staff spotlight that we started this year. The staff spotlight was actually a DLT initiative. So this was something that Mr. Isle and Mrs. Devers and the rest of the DLT group, when we were meeting, I believe in September or October, we talked about ways of raising each other up as staff members and just recognizing all the great things that are happening. I think just listening to the presentations tonight over the scores and the trips and all the involvement, I mean, there are some really amazing things that the staff are doing, and it's just another way of giving that recognition. So what we do is, I'll kind of go through the process here on the next slide, but it's a weekly infographic that I create on Lucid Press, which is a program that we have because we are a Google school, so we have it through our Google Workspace. And then it is emailed out by Mr. Johansson. It is posted to the district website. But again, the big thing is this is something that our district leadership team came together and decided would be a really good way just to highlight some things that are happening. And I just put a couple examples up here from throughout the year. So the process, the first step in the process is the staff shouts each other out. So this can be done via email. Some buildings have a Google form set up where they can, staff members can go in, they can fill that Google form out, and it's shipped to the right person. I know some parents have actually emailed in because when I'm putting this into the infographic, it will say my child, my son, my daughter. So it's not just something that, is created by one person, by the admin in the building. This recognition is coming from multiple sources. And then once, like I said, once that recognition comes in, it goes to a Google Doc. So that's a second step there that I kind of go through then, and then I copy and paste, and then I start to puzzle and put together the infographic, like I said, using Lucid Press, and then we ship it out. So as I mentioned, it does get shipped out by Mr. Johansson, but it also is posted to our district website so that people can access it, anyone can access it. If you go on our website and you search Spotlight, you'll be able to see all of those from throughout the year. They are also added weekly in that highlight section of our website. So if you scroll down below the header image, you'll see kind of updates from the district. And generally it will say, check out this week's Spotlight, and it might even list the staff members' names for that week. So I just kind of wanted to explain the process there. This was something that we thought as a DLT committee would be just a nice way to really, again, show each other that we appreciate each other, and again, get some insight from the community as well when those parents do email in. I also want to take this time to kind of talk about what's going on in the tech department. Sometimes the tech department we're kind of behind the scenes, so there's, it's nice to have the stage every once in a while to say, hey, here's what's going on. The big thing right now is test preparation. We had the state's test from ODE, we had NWA, which is the MAP testing, and then also AP testing. Now, AP testing was paper pencil this year, but we did have one tech requirement that we had to help fulfill. But as far as the state testing and the MAP testing, we have to make sure that every building has devices for students who maybe forgot theirs on that day, or the app isn't launching that day for some reason, or maybe their device is being repaired and they need a loaner. I do have to give a ginormous shout out to Lori Thompson, Mandy McBride, all the staff that's at DEFR, so Sandy Swim, Dina Pa, because during these tests, these students are kind of coming down to the office or coming down to the media center to grab these loaners, and because they are so organized and because they are so willing to help our students, they were able to get these devices to the students so they could start their test on time. Also, a big part of test preparation when it comes to tech is making sure that our network is stable. It's one of those things where you can't really predict it. It's, it just kind of happens. And so Rick Alshouse is the amazing network specialist in our district, and so he was very on top of making sure that we were prepared as we could be for network issues during testing. Another big thing was the BenQ interactive display boards that were mounted at DEFR. These display boards kind of took the place of the traditional projector. They are interactive, so they are touch points, so we can have 20 touch points at the same time, so multiple students can be up, they can be navigating. Over spring break, our maintenance staff, Joe and Jason and Dennis, did an amazing job of getting these displays mounted so that when staff and students came back from spring break, they were able to jump right into learning from them. Again, on the back end, there was a lot of connecting to the network and making sure that everything was set up so that we could jump right in. But so far, they have proven to be a really great addition to the classrooms, and we are continuing to learn new tricks with these boards because they are something that's new to our district. Always classroom integration. We're doing a lot right now with Minecraft and DEFR, that's a big thing. Always integrating different Google tools because we, like I said, we are a Google workspace district. We were using Book Creator down with, or actually here in the Spanish classes. We did a lot of merge cubes and virtual reality elements at DEFR. And then we also did some virtual reality down with the kindergarten and first grade recently, kind of bringing things to life and while still connecting to the standards that they're learning in class. And then the big thing is our Chromebooks collection, distribution. So right now, as we near the end of the school year, we are in the process of starting the collection stage where we have to kind of map out who's keeping their Chromebooks for the summer, where are we keeping the ones we're collecting, who's getting new Chromebooks. So right now, we're in the process, I said, of planning the collection and starting the collection, but we're also at the same time figuring out the distribution of when are they going to come back, who's going to get those new devices. So we are going through and we're tagging and we're adding all these devices to our inventory right now and getting those prepped so that when we come back in the fall, we can jump right into instruction with so all students have their devices ready to go. So that's just kind of a snapshot of what's going on in the tech department, a snapshot of what the staff spotlight or shout out opportunity is, but I just kind of wanted to share what we're doing. So if anyone has any questions or anything, I'm here all day.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Dan.
No problem.
You guys are like the hidden gem.
Oh, I like that. I'm gonna put that on
Use
my.
it in your staff spotlight.
Yeah, right. I'll just put a picture of like a diamond instead of my face.
Exactly.
So the hidden gem. So.
All the behind the scenes guys.
Yeah. Right.
Big shout out to Dan
Big
and
shout out.
Rick All's house, Uncle Rico, as I like to call him. These guys make it happen, and they're unbelievable, and I know that I can always depend on them. Our operations team can always depend on them. We ask them to do something, we give them a task, and that's it. It's out of sight, out of mind. We know it's going to get done. So, Dan, thank you for always making it happen.
Thank you.
Giving this great presentation this evening.
Great.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I think we're done with this. So.
Yes.
All right.
All right, and then just a couple quick items. This evening, you'll be asked on the consent agenda for a sale of a bus. It follows board policy 8.14 for sale. For a sale, this bus has been out of service for a long time and strips of all parts that could be used. The district is going to be selling this to the Streetsboro Firefighters Association for training purposes, and our transportation team will also be invited to do some training on that on May 17th. This is a bus that's been sitting in the bus lot for quite some time. It's an eyesore, and we're happy to be able to have that to train on and to work with our community partners on that. I think that just makes us that much more safer and effective and efficient. God forbid if there's ever an emergency like that, we'll have the right resources to do that. I don't know, Mr. Grimm, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Just a couple things. For full transparency to the board and the community, all members of the fire department are members of the Firefighters Association. Because of that, and whether or not there's any direct benefit to me from it, I am abstaining from the vote tonight. The benefit that the Firefighters Association is getting, which is to the entire department, is the ability to essentially divide that bus into 3 sections, and each of our 3 shifts will have an opportunity to do some cutting on the bus. It's been more than a decade since we've had a bus from anywhere to train on. Our idea is to, we're going to have the bus towed from the lot where it's at now over to the old City Hall site. It'll be flipped on its side, and we will take turns cutting it up. The first day, the bus drivers that are available will come out and do some training with operations department and us. Afterwards, they can stick around and see the first shift start cutting into the bus. But, you know, the marks on the bus mean something, so it's a refresher for a lot of our people, and for the guys that are new on the department and into the service, it gets them that initial knowledge as, you know, where to cut and what things are. The drivers will be able to use the emergency exits that they normally wouldn't be able to do. But it'll be a good day of training for next Tuesday with the drivers, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, our shifts will take their turns at it. And again, just so the community and the board's aware, once that is done, the tow company will come back, upright the bus, and take it for scrap. So what we buy it for through the association, we don't get anything else out of it except the training out of it. So there is no monetary gain from the Firefighters Association, myself, or anybody else. But you know, there is a gain between us and the school district for the knowledge and the experience that hopefully we never have to use. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. And just to piggyback on it, he did say it'll go for scrap, but that was the deal with the towing service. They're not charging for any of the towing services. They're being good community partners as well, and they're going to be allowed to have that for those purposes. So we did follow board policy. We had evaluation of the bus done to make sure it fell within the right thresholds for all this to happen. So I just wanted to assure you tonight when you were voting on that we did do our due diligence and that is what will be happening. And then quick update, just some summer projects we have going on in case you see some things happening in the district as you're driving through. DEFRA's HVAC Master Control Project with Gardner will begin May 31st and is scheduled to be finished by July 31st. The board office HVAC project is going to start June 6th and hopefully be finished by June 17th, but we're going to be doing some beautification there as well, so potentially July 1st depending on where we're at with things. GPD facility evaluation is going to begin June 1st through August 11th. The annex parking lot is going to be sealed and striped in June and July. DEFRA parking lot patched and painted June and July. The softball, baseball path sealed in June and July. And we're going to continue to do the rock beds all through main campus this summer, similar to here. And amongst many others, but those are just some of the ones that we have scheduled currently that I wanted to make you aware of. And then I also listed a bunch of events, fun events going on in May. May is a crazy month in schools, lots of fun activities, lots of operational things, so we're staying very busy. But I just wanted to kind of give a rundown here. May 9th, we had our one school, one book lunch at Henry Deffer. That was picnic themed. It was a lot of fun. Tomorrow, it's at SES. These are lunches that go along with the book they're reading. So they're reading a book, and that book may have a certain food or something like that, and we're going to provide a lunch that kind of goes with that. So shout out to the nutrition group for making that happen and the reading coaches at those buildings. Rita Kroger and Missy Oyer for working with us to make that happen. SES Field Day on May 20th. That's going to be a big event, lots of fun. Mr. McCann has scheduled a senior clap out at each building on May 23rd, and that'll be followed by a senior picnic at the stadium. So that will be an exciting event for our seniors, something they've never done before, go back in the buildings that they were at and kind of walk through, be clapped out, get to look around and see all that good stuff. So that will be fun. May 24th is the Deffer Rainbow Walk at the middle school stadium. May 25th, third grade pizza at the park. May 27th, eighth grade promotion at the middle school stadium. May 11th is the Deffer Band Show and Choir Show that had passed. That was the other night. May 23rd through 27th is Mohican Week or Camp Week that we heard about today. And then we're going to cap it all off with graduation on May 24th, 7:30 p.m. And we're going to close it down with fireworks at 9. So something new we're adding to the arsenal of graduation this year that we're looking forward to. Campus will be closed down at 4 p.m. that day, just for everyone's knowledge, because we need to get campus ready for that and be ready to park a significant amount of cars that evening. So looking forward to all of those fun events in May. And Mr. Violi, this is up to you. Do you want me to give you an update on the sign here or in old business, sir?
Why don't you go ahead and do it now?
Okay.
It'll save me, it'll
Listen,
save
I
me
just don't want to
anything.
steal your limelight when we get there.
That's not a problem. I appreciate you mentioning it.
Yes.
Or else I would have to.
So I did reach out to John for a couple reasons. One reason is because I'm very interested in getting the deafer sign done, like the rest of our signs in the school district. So that's a work in progress because we have to get permits and go through all of those things. So I'm working with him to make that happen at some point here. But I did ask about the digital sign, and the update that I got was they're still awaiting frontage info and associated maps to help determine the minimum lot frontage for the EMCs. Once that's determined, they will work on drafting zoning text in assistance with the law director and consulting attorney. So that is where the process is at the moment. That was an update as of May 10th.
So you'll update us again next month?
I'll
If
do
you
my
have something.
best. I'll do my best. Okay,
Do we have to pay for permits for the sign?
I'm working through it.
Thank you.
I don't have an answer right now.
In the past, I believe some permits have been waived.
They have been waived in the past. But that's up to the mayor who makes a recommendation to the city council to do that.
We're not quite there, we're just in preliminary stages. I sent some pictures of our signs that we have and asked about permits for those signs and what that process would look like as I'm getting pricing. I'm working with the two vendors that did the signs though, because we would like them to look uniform. And so we'll see what that pricing looks like. We'll follow board policy on those purchases, but that's a little bit down the road to come.
And I just want to make a comment about the May events. I know how difficult it can be and time-consuming to plan events, especially when you're talking about a bunch of children. It's like herding cats, I hear. From a PTA perspective, that was like herding cats, and we were all adults. So it definitely can be challenging. I just want to thank everyone who has put in the thought and the work to having all of these unique, fun things and new things that we're coming up with. That goes back to a testament of our staff here in this district and how great they are. And then you will let us know, someone will let us know what time to be there for graduation?
Yes.
Okay,
That will come out,
got it.
probably for Mr.
The
McKee.
board will
That
be-
was a Kristen question, but I figured I would ask it.
We'll get you that info, no problem.
Cool.
We'll make sure that you know the times and dates, and typically the board is invited to serve the seniors breakfast on the morning of
yeah,
graduation
let us know.
practice, but we'll get all that out to you
Perfect,
as soon as everything's finalized.
that's great.
That will be the morning of the 24th. They have the
Okay.
breakfast and then practice. So we'll make sure.
Yeah, just make sure we have it.
Mhm.
I'll block my calendar.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Scarsapino. Moving on to board reports. Mrs. Bedford.
Yes, we've had a fantastic athletic year in Streetsboro, so I just want to shout out to all the kids, whether you're in a sport right now or not. I think we've had a great year. So let's start with baseball. The team's 10-6 overall and 8-6 in the MAC. Mike Sweet was selected to receive the Golden Glove Award, and he has a 5-2 record with a 1.33 ERA. Noah Newman is leading the team in hitting with a 340 batting average, and Jake Smolik is batting 314. So congratulations to those boys. In softball, the team's currently 5-11 with several conference games remaining. They did defeat Kenston 7-0 in the sectional semifinal on Tuesday, and they're traveling to Alliance for the sectional championship on Thursday. So good luck. Hope they're probably playing now. On track, the boys and girls track teams are starting their league meets this week and also preparing for the postseason. The boys have recently placed first overall in the Mogador Invite and third overall in the Austintown Fitch Invitational. And we've got currently a bunch of athletes that are ranked in state. So the conference championship meet is Thursday night in Ravenna. And that's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Bedford. Moving on to Mrs. Campbell.
Both PTA and the Educational Foundation presented scholarships to graduating seniors at senior night on Monday evening. Aside from that, I don't have much more to report.
Thank you, Mrs. Campbell. Mr. Fulton?
Well, I was looking at the future of our district and as far as screening goes. It seems like the state is on the move to do something with dyslexia. And at this time, I don't have a lot to report on it. I started to print out the dyslexia book. It's about 62 pages. It kind of killed my printer. But hopefully Kyle will help me out in that area, so I
Yes.
can get a better
Is it
handout of it.
62 or 26?
Pardon?
Is it 62 or 26?
62 pages for the handbook.
I see what you did there.
Okay. Anyway, my concern basically, as a board member, and that is, I'm not real sure about our screening right now for kindergarten, and it seems like the state, I think they're having this meeting the same time we're having it, I think. But if it does get approved by the Board of Education, this might really push our screening committees to get going on it, dyslexia also. They talked about in the future screening students as they would come in, being new to our district, and just doing grades, I think, first through third grade also. It's a concern because we do need a lot more input in, as a district, as how we're going to handle this. So I know screening is an important part of education too.
It's a very common problem, too. A lot of people have it.
Especially when, like we're talking about open enrollment in this and people moving around. I'm interested in the way we're handling the financial picture on that. But as a former administrator, I know that screening is so important. To give you a quick example, as a principal, I went to their houses for kindergarten with the kindergarten teacher. I'm not saying this is the way we should do it in our district, but when you ride the school bus and you get off and you greet that child and see where these houses are and that, you get a real picture of what this child, on that bus, how long they have to ride a school bus too sometimes, especially out in country school districts where it was a long ride.
Mr. Fulton, I have some knowledge about that law, so we
And we
can
used
talk.
to pick
We
up
can talk.
every student, like Madison local district, no one was allowed to walk to school in Lake County because of ditches. In Bedford, when I worked there, was just the opposite. The child next door.
Yeah, we can go offline
Oh,
about
okay,
details
okay.
of that law.
They
Yeah.
were picked up too. It was getting a little difficult, but anyway, we talked about the academic committee. I had a brief discussion with Mr. Ely. Him and I will get together a little bit, and he'll tell me more information about the academics of our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fulton. And Mr. Grimm.
Yes, CJ had mentioned fireworks for graduation. By Ohio law, the fire department has already worked on securing the proper permits for that. We will have two people there that night when the truck arrives, and they will have a safety zone set up. We had a meeting with the operations department probably a couple weeks ago, and the operations department will have a hand in that evening, setting up a safe zone, but that's all been taken care of. The high school band and auxiliary will be working hard throughout the summer to bring you some more amazing performances in the fall. And look out for the band car washes. It's in June 4th and 18th. They will be at Big D's on State Route 14. And June 11th and 25th, they will be at O'Reilly's Auto Parts on State Route 14. All the car washes, weather permitting, are scheduled from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And it's usually a donation base, so don't be a cheapo. Go get your car washed and throw some cash their way to help the band out. It's a pretty good fundraiser for them. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm, and I do not have a report this evening, so we will move on to the consent agenda. And I'd like to remove H from at your request.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Nothing big, I just think I could have
So
missed
that's
an
being
email to
pulled off
review it.
off the consent agenda. So it's recommended the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items B through G and I through S.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any comments?
I just have one comment. Just thank Kyle and Mr. Bordwine for their work on item G, our facility rental agreement. Just reading through it, my conversation with Kyle earlier was it just protects everybody. It's a good idea. Reading through some of these, for Thrive, it spells out what areas they're going to have access to, protects them so that the school district can't come in and say, well, you can't have this area today, you can't have that area today, and then it throws off their whole performance. The funds, if any, that are collected by the schools are going right back into a fund to support the auditorium. And then there's, again, to protect us, protect Thrive, so they know they have access to certain areas. everything will be scheduled through the operations department. So I just wanted to thank Mr. Kiffer and Mr. Boardwine, wherever you are this evening, for working that out. I think it's good for everybody. Thank you.
I'd like to mention the donations that are on the agenda to just take a look at those. And there is an item R on here. We have 2 very long-term employees that are retiring. God bless them, and I'm envious. But I want to just thank Randy Clark and Sherry Koppel. Sherry's one art teacher here at one of the schools, and Randy is one of our custodians. I don't know exactly how many years both of them have, but I believe that they're both over 30. Wow. So congratulations to both of them. And thank you for your service. And if there are no further comments, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bedford?
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Fulton?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes, motion carried. Moving on to superintendent's recommendations.
We have one that
We have one more consent
the one that you
agenda.
pulled off.
Huh?
The bus, F, we pulled F off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Was it H you pulled?
You pulled
We
H
pulled H
off.
H off,
And
sorry.
I'm just asking for a
We're
vote.
just pulling that off. We're not voting on it.
Got it.
Oh.
There's still some time on that.
So we're good?
Thank you.
Okay. Superintendent's recommendations.
Thank you. I have 3. Item A, it is recommended the Board of Education hire Julie Taylor as the middle school principal effective August 1st, 2022 through July 31st, 2025.
I'll move.
I will second.
We have a first and a second. Would you like to make any comments?
Yes, I would like to say that my administrative team pulled Julie in prior to spring break when she was getting ready to fly to Florida to be with her family, and asked her to take over the leadership at the middle school when she returned from spring break. And it was a pretty big ask. She had no idea that this was coming. And I will say from my perspective, and I know a lot of people's perspectives, that Julie has done a very nice job from that point, and she has really did a nice job pulling the district or the building staff together and setting some very clear and high expectations for our students. Mr. Isle, Mrs. Devers, and I spent some time talking to Julie about her vision for the building, and she very clearly articulated both an academic vision for the building, but also a vision centering around clear student expectations and staff expectations. And when I formally offered the job, pending your approval, board, to Julie, I sent that note out to staff, and I was immediately had a barrage of positive email messages regarding Julie's leadership. So I'm happy to make the recommendation to tap Julie as our next principal at the middle school. So I don't know if anyone else has anything to say. I know CJ, you're over there a lot.
You said it. She's doing a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know, Ms. Taylor, I mean, there was a little bit of a pause when you were doing the first and the second during the motions, so I'm not sure if that's going to be, it's given us a hint on what the vote's going to be like, but Mr. Veal, I think we're probably ready for that.
Should we wait a little longer?
We might need to.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Violi?
Absolutely.
Mrs. Campbell?
I guess so. Yes.
Please answer yes or no.
Absolutely yes.
Mrs. Bedford?
Yes.
Mr. Fulton?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Motion is unanimously carried. Congratulations, Joel. Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for stepping in, and thank you for everything that you've done.
I echo that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, board. My second recommendation is recommended the Board of Education approve the certified contracts for the 2022-2023 school year as shown below.
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Any comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford?
Yes.
Mr. Fulton?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes. Motion carried.
Okay, item C, it is recommended the Board of Education approve the classified contracts for the 2022-2023 school year as shown below.
I'll move.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Any comments? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford?
Yes.
Mr. Fulton?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes, motion carried.
That concludes my recommendations. Ms. Taylor, congratulations again.
Moving on to treasurer's recommendations.
Most of them I already mentioned today. It is recommended the Board of Education approve amended appropriations for fiscal year '22, and estimated resources will be adjusted as permanent appropriation.
I'll move.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Comments? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford?
Yes.
Mr. Fulton?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes, motion carried.
It is recommended the Board of Education approve the meter of the investment management agreement with Meter Public Funds Incorporated.
I'll move.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Do you have further comments?
Nope.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bedford?
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Fulton?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes, motion carried.
It is recommended the Board of Education approve the agreement with Spark for wireless management services beginning July 1, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023 for a total cost of $9,040. This fee is for service that includes wireless access point management.
I'll move.
Second.
First and a second. Any comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford?
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Fulton?
Yes.
Motion carried.
It is recommended the Board of Education approve a contract for Spark beginning July 1, 2022 through June 30th, 2023 for internet services in an amount not to exceed $34,594.
I'll move.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second.
Yes, the not to exceed, there was just I had a couple questions, so there could be possibility if I see documentation that satisfies the questions that could be a little bit more in the future. So this is just to exceed, this is a little math calculation.
Is this something that we shop for pricing every year or every 3 years?
We'd be generally aware of ITCs. We've just been with Spark, and they've been a great partner over the years. So the answer is kind of.
Okay.
But Mr. Daubaugh does sit on the board, and everything's pretty. It's been a good partnership
Okay.
from the financial sense.
Yep, just curious.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Violi?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford?
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Fulton?
Yes.
Motion carried.
It is recommended the Board of Education approve the May 2022 five-year forecast as presented and authorize the treasurer to submit to the Ohio Department of Education.
I'll move.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Very good presentation, by the way. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bedford?
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Fulton?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes, motion carried. Moving on to Chief Business Officer's recommendations. Wow.
Not have any this evening, Mr. Violi.
There's nothing there.
Did I, what? I thought we had another 20 minutes.
Andre, everybody's
Moving-
a critic, but we get stuff done.
Moving on.
Just know that.
Moving on. Do we have any new business? Hearing none. And do we have any old business? I don't have anything. Thank you for bringing it up. And now move on to Board President's recommendations. Item A, executive session is recommended Board of Education enter into executive session to consider the employment of a public employee or official, to consider matters required to be kept confidential by federal law or regulations or state statute, and to consider details relative to security arrangements and emergency response protocols or a public office with possible action to follow.
I'll move.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford?
Yes.
Mr. Fulton?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes. Motion carried. We're in executive session at 7:26 p.m.